Stephen King defends Daenerys Targaryens story arc in Game of Thrones Season 8. Game of Thrones Season 8 has had a lot of fans feeling angry at the progression of the story. We have seen the noted author Stephen King, who is also good friends with the creator of Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin, tweeted out his support for Game of Thrones Season 8, and particularly Daenerys Targaryen's Mad Queen story arc. Check out his tweet: "I've loved this last season of GOT, including Dany going boob shit all over King's Landing. There's been a lot of Stephen King at Step Henking." King has been very vocal about Game of Thrones, especially with this season. He also recently, "What are your opinions on Game of Thrones Season 8? Did you like Daenerys? Hey race why HBO couldn't keep Game of Thrones 100% leak-free despite so much security? Spoilers driving you mad? A UK episode leaks, plot point leaks, images and screen grabs flying out of spoiler accounts hours before airing Game of Thrones Season 8 has seen it all. This, despite HBO's overseas distribution structure, says this report. Simply put, HBO is a channel, and not exclusively digital content curators like Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon. Their streaming service. Now many of these channels that carry little or no HBO branding, and HBO isn't involved in the distribution process through every step of the way. This is ripe territory. Well, not exactly. HBO could have. Plus, that is unfair to both the global viewership of Game of Thrones and HBO partners in many countries, some of whom have had entire subscription drives based on Game of Thrones airing rights. There is also the fact that leaks seem to have no effects whatsoever on the show's popularity. Game of Thrones HBO seems to have decided spoilers are better than piracy and let their international distribution model run as usual for Game of Thrones Season 8. Game of Thrones is getting over in a few hours, but we have some big plans for the community once the show ends. Please visit our with just one episode left before Game of Thrones concludes forever. Spoilers are raining left and right, and unless you are okay with knowing all the twists beforehand, it's a very dangerous time for fans. But if you live in the Ensley Insurance Services has a first-of-its-kind spoiler package exclusively for Game of Thrones fans who have received spoilers about the show from social media, news outlets, or friends and family. Though cheekily marked, because of the time zone differences between the US and the UK, the HBO show airs at 2 AM in the UK, and a lot of time passes before fans are able to get up in the morning and catch the show. By that time, Ensley is seeking to address this scenario. Ensley's head of Game of Thrones is one of the biggest shows of the last decade, and the finale promises to bring in some of the largest audiences on record. With the show, the package can be claimed retroactively, as in you can claim spoiler damage for any episode previously aired, as well as the one slated for May 19th. The catch? The claim period closes on May 26th, and the results will be announced on May 31st. You can apply for this. Game of Thrones has been such a social phenomenon that it has become a source of baby names for a lot of people. With an iconic reports that Jasmine Estrada, a Game of Thrones fan who named her daughter after Daenerys Targaryen, was upset after watching Dany go Mad Queen in Season 8, Episode 5 The Bells. Her daughter is named, oh my god. She lost her marble. Jasmine said that she still stands by the choice of name, but dislikes what it now stands for. I definitely don't like the outcome of what she represents. So it's kind of, the name had actually become quite popular, with over 500 babies having been given the name in the United States, last year alone. It became the 5, what do you guys think? Talk to us in the episode leaks, plot point leaks, images and screen grabs flying out of spoiler accounts hours before airing Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones Season 8 finale drops in a few hours, and we are getting some last-minute teases right. Game of Thrones Season 8 has had a lot of fans feeling angry at the progression of the story. Game of Thrones has had a respectable star cast, ranging from the young first-timers to the industry veteran actors. At the moment, Game of Thrones is having a bad run with the latest season becoming the lowest rated season in. Game of Thrones has had a history of plot twists that go completely against our expectations, and that happened again. Game of Thrones said goodbye to a lot of characters in Season 8 Episode 5, The Bells. One of these 19 details you might have missed in Game of Thrones Season 8 Episode 5. HBO releases photos from Game of Thrones series finale. Update: 1 million fans sign the petition to remake Game of Thrones Season 8 with competent writers. The Bells becomes the lowest rated Game of Thrones episode ever. Lord Varys tried to poison Daenerys Targaryen in the latest Game of Thrones episode. Kit Harington gets emotional in Game of Thrones The Last Watch documentary trailer. Game of Thrones prequel update: filming continues at Belfast, series gets a working title. Game of Thrones fan who named her daughter Khaleesi in shock after Daenerys' Mad Queen outburst. Copyright 2019 Wiki of Thrones, all contents right reserved. Join our mailing list to receive the latest news and updates from the Citadel.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.